Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another program of the INSS podcast series, today broadcasted to you from our new studios here at the INSS Tel Aviv. My name is Adi Kantor, I'm a research associate at the Institute, and next to me in the table are senior researcher Udi Dekel, who served as managing director of the INSS for 10 years and currently heads the research program of the Palestinian arena. And next to him is our colleague Noa Shusterman, researcher at the INSS and the Israel-Palestinian Research Program coordinator. Udi and Noa, warm welcome to the both of you.
Thank you.
So we dedicate our program today to discuss the content of your new memorandum, which was just published in English, titled The Day After Abbas, Strategic Implications for Israel. The question of who will replace this or succeed Mahmud Abbas as president of the Palestinian Authority is definitely one of the most urgent and important issues, specifically regarding the Palestinian arena, but also has, of course, clear implications to Israel. The research we discussed today was an effort of a team of experts of the Palestinian Research Program who joined together with the purpose of examining the possible scenarios after President Abbas's departure and the repercussions for Israeli-Palestinian affairs. Now, in order to discuss this issue in depth, I'd like to turn the first question to you, Udi. And maybe you know, before we discuss possible scenarios you detect for the future of the PA and the Israeli-Palestinian relations, I think it would be a good idea to start with the question of why? Why publishing this kind of research, and why now? The question of timing. And I'll explain what I mean with also discuss the background. When looking at the situation, in the background we witness, of course, the weakening of the Palestinian Authority, the weakening of the legitimacy in the eye of the Palestinian people, the terror wave from the West Bank, the phenomenon of the lion's den and the intergenerational changes we see in the Palestinian society, the strengthening of Hamas in Gaza, etc., etc. Do you think it's right to say that we are already in the day after Abbas? Your stage.
Yes. Basically, yes, because we are in the day after Abbas. Even Abbas is only 87 years old. We know that everybody, the main actors in the Palestinian side, are already act and manage the situation according the day after. But we worked about this. This is not really research because it is more strategic planning work or framework, because we wanted to check all the possible scenarios of the day after Abbas to be ready for scenarios that people don't think about them. We didn't try to predict who will be after him because there is a long list of people that we discuss it in that work, but this is not the main idea. The main idea to understand what can be the scenarios and what will be the consequences of those scenarios if Israel can do things today in order to prevent the negative scenario and try to push forward the positive scenarios, okay? What is positive, what is negative, we can discuss because what kind of point of view you are looking upon that. And the main idea was to be ready, because we have to think about things that happen today, as you said, and look what is better for us in the day after Abbas. And I can say that the main conclusion that for Israel interest is better Palestinian Authority, effective function, stable, accountable, that we can do business with them. I'm not speaking about, the permanent status agreement. I don't speak about the end state, even the managing the situation today. And if this is good, this is the idea that we would like to see, what we have to do today, that the Palestinian Authority will be effective function and
stable,
positive, stable player in order to deal with all the challenges that they will meet in the day after Abbas and even today. But I would like to say that I'm not sure that this is the main objective of the government of Israel today, and we have to discuss it later.
We will definitely discuss this as latest development that is taking place in our country. Thank you, Udi. I'd like to turn now to you, Noa, and now go in depth of the leading main scenarios that you detected in your research. What are the scenarios? What will affect the probability of each scenario? I think this is another interesting question to discuss. And maybe you can refer maybe more to the consequences from the Palestinian perspectives. Afterwards, we will discuss, of course, with Udi about the Israeli perspective. And if you can also say a word about the intergenerational shift that we're witnessing regarding young adults in the Palestinian society, and how do you see all of this is connected?
Okay. So I'm going to try to think of, to remember towards the end of my answer.
I'll remind you.
To make sure that I answered everything. So first, looking at the scenarios, I like to divide it into 5 main scenarios. So the first one, which I think you can say that now this seems to be the leading scenario, is having an appointed successor who is appointed by Abbas, and he's trying to cultivate the environment in order to have him as his replacement. At the beginning, there was talk about Tawfiq Tirawi, and that was ended. Then it was Hussein al-Sheikh, who I think is now has been the most dominant player. But now recently, just a few weeks ago, there were tapes that were released by Hamas of Hussein al-Sheikh speaking against Mahmud Abbas. So now there's new conversation about maybe it will be Mahmoud al-Alul. So it's talking about probability. Everything is very circumstantial and really depends on the timing and what are the circumstances that are taking place at the moment on the ground. So that's one option. The second option is having a division of power. So basically, right now, Abbas has 3 hats. He's the chairman of the PA, he's the chairman of the PLO, and he's the chairman of Fatah. So these 3 hats, each one of them pertains to different roles that he has within the Palestinian arena. And there's a lot of discussion coming from the ground about whether or not it's needed to have one person with these all three hats. And maybe one of the ways to actually modernize and decentralize power is having 3 separate people fill these 3 separate positions. But this can actually lead into a struggle of succession, which is the third scenario, which is basically we have a few candidates who are now claiming or trying to prepare themselves to succeed Abbas. They're trying to strengthen their power and put themselves in positions of power for the day after. So whether or not they will be willing to compromise on only one of these hats and not maybe going and demanding another position. And generally speaking, there's a high probability of having these succession struggles because right now the mechanism is not clear as to what is going to happen the day after Abbas. Supposedly, and this leads to the fourth scenario, the Constitution stipulates elections. After 60 days from the president's departure, then there's supposed to be elections. Whether or not this can actually take place in a PA that the legal system has been eroded and the legal structures have been actually formed in a way to strengthen Abbas, it's left to be seen whether or not the mechanism is actually going to take place. But I have to say that in terms of popularity and legitimacy from the Palestinian public, this is the only legitimate way to have another Palestinian president. Any of the other options that I've described, even if there is an appointed successor, he would not be seen as a legitimate successor because he was never actually democratically elected.
Yes, by the people.
By the people. And the fifth scenario is actually leading into chaos scenarios. So each one of these scenarios has the potential to basically to escalate into further chaos, in which this could be a Hamas takeover. This could be disillusionment of the PA. and a devolution of it, basically an essential collapse and lack of governance and inability to govern because of these power struggles.
Do you see any probability for this kind of scenario?
I think it's not far-fetched to have one of these scenarios, because right now we already see a weakening of the Palestinian Authority in the periphery, and a struggle for the PA to actually be able to govern in full, especially when it comes to security.
Yeah.
And this is a challenge not only placed by Israel, but it's placed from within. Talking about the lion's den, this is not only...
And the young people, the young adults.
Exactly.
What has happened? What is this intergenerational shift that you're discussing in your research?
So in the research, one of the components, or one of the reasons that we see maybe leading to chaos, is actually the intergenerational gap. The Palestinian Authority, or the Palestinians at large, is a very young population, and when these young people, and when we talk about the Lion's Den, they have not lived through the Second Intifada.
Exactly.
They have not experienced the Palestinian arena and the outcome of the Second Intifada. So now
But their parents, of course.
their parents have, and their parents have taught them that the resistance is not the way, but they ask what is the way,
What
and,
is
and
left,
if the way is diplomacy, then we see what the Palestinian Authority was able or unable to bring to the table. And basically this phenomenon of Lion's Den, I think it's in a way, it's a harbinger of what's going to come. It's having disillusioned young folks who are saying that we do not believe in what the Palestinian Authority is able to bring us. And our only way is to stand on...
There's no trust in the system anymore.
No trust in the system, no confidence that they are able to provide, especially because they feel that they do not have any kind of personal sense of security.
And maybe very disappointed.
And they're very disappointed, and they feel that the Israeli army can come and enter the Palestinian towns whenever it wants, and there's nobody who stands the ground for the Palestinians. So this is basically an action that's not only coming against Israel and challenging Israel, but it's also challenging the authority and the governance of the Palestinian Authority. And if this phenomena widens, then this can absolutely lead to a chaos scenario of intergenerational infighting.
Okay.
If
sure,
I
please.
can add something, because we put a lot of other scenarios we are not going to mention, but there is three, let's say, family of scenarios.
Or sub-scenarios.
Also, the big scenarios.
Okay.
Three main big scenarios. The first one is some kind of continuity. Okay, this is the positive scenario. We don't believe that we have to base on the positive scenario, not to rely on positive scenario. The second one is the second that, as I tried to mention all of that Noa already said, this is ongoing instability. This is the situation that we already see today. And it will continue the ongoing, this is the positive way of continue of ongoing instability in the Palestinian side. But we have to be
also
ready.
an endpoint.
Yes, because it's lead to the anarchy and chaos and even the collapse of the Palestinian Authority. And if in the end state will be the collapse of the Palestinian Authority, that will bring us to new situation in the Palestinian arena, and Israel have to be ready for that.
Of course.
Not only, think about that, but to be ready for that situation.
And this is exactly, Udi, thank you for this, because this is exactly leads me also to the next question. So, what is the Israeli perspective now? When we were discussing the scenarios that Noa just mentioned, what is the Israeli side? How does the Israeli government, or how does Israel look at this? What will affect the probability of each scenario from the Israeli side, and what are the implications that we're talking about?
So I can say until 2 weeks ago, or let's say the last governments, the main idea was that we have to strengthen and gain the possibility or the capability of the PA to control and do their mission. We have to remember that, first of all, they control over 2.5 million Palestinian people. They're taking care about those people, about all the civil needs of those people. Second, they are doing law and order. Third, they are, of course, dealing with economic projects and things like that. And also they are cooperate with us in order to calm down the situation and to prevent terror activity in the West Bank. So we would like to
see it in de-escalation.
Okay, we can see now that there is shaking in
Exactly.
in that activity of the PA, because the PA doesn't have any more the legitimacy from the Palestinian people, and they don't bring them to the future, which maybe somebody still dream in the Palestinian side, independent Palestinian state in 67 borders, I don't know to say. So, but there was understanding in the Israeli side that we need a functioning Palestinian Authority. Today, I'm not sure that this is the idea. I'm sure that part of the government don't see the picture like that. And if we try to, let's say, to take the ability from the Palestinian Authority to control that area, we bring the situation to the collapse.
Exactly.
And in that case, I know that there is some idea what will be the day after the collapse of the Palestinian Authority. So those which are afraid of establishment of Palestinian state, it will not be on the table. And there is ideas in the Israeli side that maybe we have to create a cantonization, call it, of the Palestinian area, which each control will leading by the big families of Hamulas, which have the power. Let's say in Jenin area, it will be part of the one Hamula, in Nablus another one, in Khalil another one, and by that managing the situation, and we will be able to keep that situation forever. We don't believe that we can keep that situation forever, and we did some kind of simulation, and we see that in each one of those scenarios we arrive to real fighting between us and the Palestinians. So the main challenge today is to convince the government of Israel that we have to assist the PA to be strong enough, okay,
to prevent this from happening.
To prevent that from happening.
And to withstand any kind of the transition of power, because so going back to the scenarios, most of these scenarios have negative outcomes or have the potential to lead to negative outcomes. And the way that we can prevent this from going into and escalating into chaos scenarios is through a stable and functioning PA that is able to withstand all the turmoil that is potentially going to happen.
I'd like to ask both of you regarding this. I mean, this is a clear interest of the State of Israel to maintain a strong and stable authority, but there is, and you mentioned this also in the research, a tendency to not to make decisions from the side of the Israeli state. So what is the reason for this? Why is Israel not taking more decision?
Israel taking the decisions, but every decision is, from the near future. We are not
no long-term thinking.
No long-term thinking. That's the issue. We are taking decisions. Let's see the three main decisions.
We're taking decisions, not
the five main decisions of the first main decisions of the government of Israel was against the PA.
Sanctioning
taking
the PA.
The money.
Sanctioning,
sanctioning them, pushing them out from the Area C and other things. Not in order to support them, okay? In order to cut some of their activity and capabilities. And there is another consequences that we have to look very careful about it. If we arrive to the negative scenarios, especially the scenario which the PA is not functioning anymore,
deteriorating,
more than failed, collapse. Okay, what is the meaning? The meaning that there is other reality, and this is something that we try all the time to explain here in our institute, that most of the vectors today leading us to one state reality. Most of the Israelis, 80% of the Israelis don't want to see one state reality.
Do they understand the meaning really of what it means? The meaning of a one state reality on a day-to-day basis?
We did now focus groups to Israelis. It was very interesting. They understand that one state reality is returning back to independence war, 47. They understand. The people understand very well what is the meaning of one state reality. But they don't see any other option because nobody tried to give them the idea of other option.
For example, of a two-state reality,
yes,
for example.
And we have to take the issue of the day after Abbas, that it will be the most powerful vector toward one-state reality,
Sure.
and we have to prevent it
Yes.
because we don't want to see it. Okay, because the Palestinians will not disappear; they will stay here, and we have to take
Both
care.
peoples will not.
Yes, and then we have to take care about them. Today, the PA take care about
Yeah.
them, so we have to take care about them. This is the picture
I'm not
that
sure
we
the
would like
Israeli
to
public
see.
is really aware 100% of what it means.
I think they are aware to the fact that the Palestinians are not going to go anywhere, but I think where the misconception is about national aspirations. And the entire premise of any kind of cantonization, which has really been, you hear it more and more with Israeli discourse, is it's under the premise that if the quality of life would be good enough, then the Palestinians would kind of release their national aspirations. They would be willing to live in their governance and autonomies. And under the Israeli state with, a residentship or kind of a lower level citizenship, as long as they get their quality of life
in fantasy it's one thing, but reality
exactly.
tells us the exact opposite.
This is what the Israeli public needs to be more educated on, and one of the things that we try to educate on is exactly on this issue, national aspirations. And I mean, it's very clear to us that Israel would not release its national
or give up our
national aspirations. And we talk emphatically about how for 2,000 years we've
longed for
been
national
exiled
home.
and longed for our national home, but it's unclear to us on how Palestinians perceive this. And I think from our polling and from our focus group, it's very, very clear that as more or less people support the two-state solution, and this is clear as a trend, it's not necessarily being replaced by support for a one-state solution. It's being replaced for people who say, I don't know.
No,
or maybe the status quo, or let's.
No, we see that more than 65% of the Israelis supporting, they don't know what is it, but supporting separation.
They don't know the meaning of it.
The meaning, separation, we are speaking about political, demographic, and geographic separation.
That's what we speak about. They don't speak about it necessarily because they don't understand
about that.
it.
This is in the question. They support that. They don't know what is the meaning of that. They cannot
on the ground.
The reality on the ground. This is the problem. People cannot understand or describe the reality on the ground. So we, by the scenarios, try to explain to them what can be the reality on the ground and what we have to do today. And Israel still has enough power and can influence upon the process or the scenarios.
It's not a lost
but
cause
we have
yet.
To, yes, but we have to be ready to do that. And we have to pay for that because we have to give also benefits to the Palestinian side. We cannot take all the benefits to our side and not to give benefits to the Palestinian side. So we have to change our mind.
And it's realizing it's not altruistic. It's not because we care so much about the Palestinians, but it's because we care about ourselves and we care about the spillover of violence that might occur if there is more violence in the West Bank. And that these things are never left within the capsule. We are in one, especially as settlements grow bigger and bigger, and we do see more intertwinement between Israelis and Palestinians in the West Bank, then obviously what happens there will affect what happens here.
So to sum up what you're actually saying, that this is a pure Israeli interest.
Yes.
Pure Israeli interest to be more interested and more educated about what's happening with the Palestinian Authority and to make sure that we're not going into a one-state reality. I think this is a dangerous thing, and it's very clear also from this podcast. Thank you so much for this memorandum. I really recommend our viewers, our listeners to read it through, and maybe this is a beginning to a much more, a bigger research, a more in-depth research discussing this. It's definitely an interest of the INSS and an interest to the State of Israel. Thank you very, very much to Noa and to Udi, and thank you to our viewers.
Thank you, Adi.
See you in the next podcast program.